Football has always been more than just a game. It is a stage where heroes are born, legends are remembered, and emotions run higher than anywhere else. But sometimes, in between the joy and the passion, the sport delivers moments of unbearable tragedy. In Brazil, what began as a festive futsal match turned into a heartbreaking story that shocked everyone present. The goalkeeper, Antonio Edson dos Santos Sousa, known to his friends and teammates simply as Pixie, had just produced the kind of moment that players and fans dream of. He stood tall in front of the penalty spot, read the striker's intent perfectly, and stopped the decisive shot. His teammates rushed to him, the crowd cheered, and for a few fleeting seconds, he was the hero of the night. But football, like life, can change in an instant. Only moments after his brilliant save, as Antonio celebrated, his body suddenly gave way. He collapsed to the floor, and silence fell over the hall. Despite frantic efforts by medics to revive him, Antonio never got back up. The joy of victory had turned into the despair of loss, all within the blink of an eye. This is not just the story of a single player. Antonio's tragedy echoes other similar cases across the world. Goalkeepers and outfield players, young and strong, who suddenly fell in the middle of the game. Why do these events happen? Could they be prevented? And what lessons should we take from them as fans, as players, and as a football community? Tonight, we take a closer look at Antonio's final match, the medical reasons behind such incidents, and the lessons football must learn from this painful reminder. It was supposed to be a celebration. The futsal tournament in Augusto Correa, Pará, Brazil, was part of the festivities marking the 200th anniversary of Brazilian independence. The small indoor arena was packed with fans, friends, and families, all there to enjoy football in its purest form: fast, emotional, unpredictable. On that night, Antonio Edson dos Santos Sousa, affectionately called Pixie, pulled on his goalkeeper's jersey for Sindmotos. He was 34 years old, known in the local community for his commitment, his smile, and his love for the game. For him, this was not just a hobby. Futsal was his passion, his identity. As the second half wore on, tension rose. The opposition was awarded a penalty. In futsal, a penalty can change everything. It's almost always a goal. But Antonio had other ideas. He focused, braced himself, and when the shot came, he made the decisive save, chest first. The hall erupted. Teammates swarmed him. Fans screamed his name. For a few glorious moments, Antonio was the hero who had preserved his team's lead. Then, in a split second, joy turned to horror. As Antonio turned to celebrate, his legs buckled. He collapsed onto the court. At first, some thought it was part of his celebration, a dramatic fall. But within seconds, the silence told the truth. Something was terribly wrong. Medical staff rushed in, performing CPR, trying desperately to restart his heart. A defibrillator was used in an attempt to shock him back to life. Players stood in tears, fans prayed, and time seemed to freeze. But despite all efforts, Antonio could not be revived. He was later pronounced dead at the hospital. The Pará Futsal Federation released a statement. "We have lost not only a talented goalkeeper, but also a beloved member of our futsal family. Antonio Edson Pixie inspired us all with his dedication and love for the game. His memory will live forever on the court." The tournament was suspended, matches were postponed, tributes poured in from across the region. Friends described him as always smiling, always giving his best, and a true warrior under the posts. For many, it was impossible to understand how could a healthy man, full of life, die at the very moment he was celebrated as a hero. Antonio's story is not only tragic but also symbolic. It forces us to confront the fragility of life, even in the middle of joy. And it sets the stage for the deeper questions we need to ask about why such incidents occur and what can be done to prevent them. When a young, seemingly healthy athlete collapses suddenly on the field, the question everyone asks is, why? Antonio Edson's death, like several before it, has brought the medical term, sudden cardiac arrest, back into discussion. One possible explanation is commotio cordis, a rare but devastating event that occurs when a blunt impact to the chest happens at a very specific, vulnerable moment in the heart's rhythm. In Antonio's case, he saved the penalty with his chest. If the ball struck him during the critical upstroke of the heart's electrical cycle, it could have triggered a fatal arrhythmia. The heart, instead of beating normally, spirals into chaos. Within seconds, blood flow stops, and the player collapses. Commotio cordis is often seen in sports like baseball, lacrosse, or hockey, where fast projectiles strike the chest. In football and futsal, it is less common, but not impossible. For goalkeepers, who regularly use their bodies to block shots, the risk is real. Another explanation could be an undiagnosed heart condition. Many athletes, even at the amateur level, may carry genetic or structural heart problems without knowing it. Conditions like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, or congenital electrical disorders. These conditions can remain silent until intense physical exertion or sudden stress causes the heart to fail. There is also the factor of sudden exertion. Futsal is a high-intensity sport. Short sprints, explosive movements, constant changes of direction. Combined with dehydration, stress, or fatigue, the heart is under enormous pressure. For some, that can be enough to trigger cardiac arrest. The tragedy of sudden cardiac arrest is that survival depends almost entirely on immediate response. CPR and defibrillation within the first 2-3 minutes can double or even triple survival rates. But in many amateur matches, especially at local levels, equipment like defibrillators, AEDs, is missing, and medical staff may not be fully trained or ready. Seconds lost often mean lives lost. Antonio's collapse is therefore not just a medical story, but also a reminder of systemic gaps in football's safety net. It shows how even a single chest impact or an unseen condition can turn celebration into mourning, and how vital preparation and awareness are to prevent the next tragedy. Antonio Edson's death is heartbreaking, but sadly, it is not unique. Football has witnessed several tragedies where players, often at their peak, suddenly collapsed after moments of brilliance. Each story is different, yet the pattern feels hauntingly familiar. In Belgium 2023, goalkeeper Arne Espeel made headlines for the worst possible reason. Playing for Winkelsport B in the provincial second division, he saved a penalty that kept his team in front. As his teammates rushed to congratulate him, Espeel collapsed. Despite immediate attempts with a defibrillator, the 25-year-old was pronounced dead at the hospital. His story, eerily similar to Antonio's, left an entire community mourning. In Brazil 2024, futsal once again turned tragic when Roberto Peterson, a 33-year-old player, was struck in the abdomen during a match in Santa Catarina. The impact caused sudden cardiac arrest, and he died despite emergency care. Like Antonio, Peterson's death highlighted how even routine contact in futsal can have devastating consequences. In Malaysia 2025, fans lost Firoz Mohammed, a former goalkeeper for Penang FA. Playing in a veterans all-star match, he collapsed unexpectedly on the pitch. Though older than Espeel or Antonio, his passing showed that sudden cardiac arrest does not discriminate. Professional or amateur, young or experienced, the risk remains. Looking further back, the football world remembers Marc-Vivien Foé, the Cameroon midfielder who collapsed during a Confederations Cup match in 2003. Despite playing on one of the grandest stages, with medics on standby, Foe could not be saved. His death shook FIFA and led to stronger medical protocols worldwide. Even more recently, incidents like Christian Eriksen's collapse at Euro 2020, thankfully, he survived, remind us of the razor-thin margin between life and death on the field. In Eriksen's case, the presence of skilled medics and a defibrillator saved him. His survival is proof that preparation and equipment can make all the difference. These stories across continents and competitions weave a chilling narrative. A penalty save, a blocked shot, or even a simple sprint can be the last act of a player's life. The common thread is sudden cardiac arrest, the cruel reality that even athletes, symbols of strength and endurance, are not immune. By remembering Antonio, Arne, Peterson, Mohammed, and Foe, we recognize a painful truth. Football's greatest victories can sometimes be followed by its most devastating losses, and only by learning from them can the sport move toward a safer future. When we look at these tragedies together, one thing becomes clear. Goalkeepers often face unique risks that are underestimated. While outfield players cover more distance, keepers are the ones who routinely put their bodies in the line of fire. They dive at the feet of strikers, absorb shots to the chest, and react explosively with little time to brace. Each of these moments carries hidden dangers. In Antonio Edson's case, the ball striking his chest may have triggered commotio cordis. For Arne Espeel, the sudden collapse suggested an underlying cardiac condition. For Roberto Peterson, the abdominal impact caused cardiac arrest. The variety of causes shows how fragile the line between life and death can be, even in routine actions of the game. What's even more troubling is the lack of medical preparedness at lower tier or amateur competitions. At the highest levels of football, there are team doctors, advanced equipment, and emergency protocols. Christian Eriksen survived because Denmark's medical staff were trained, and a defibrillator was immediately available. But in local futsal, tournaments, or provincial leagues, resources are limited. Seconds are lost searching for help, and those seconds cost lives. Another issue lies in the culture of sport itself. Athletes are celebrated for playing through pain, hiding symptoms, and sacrificing their health for victory. Chest discomfort, fatigue, or dizziness are often ignored until it's too late. The pressure to perform, especially for goalkeepers, who live under constant scrutiny, only makes it worse. Antonio's tragedy is not just a random accident. It is a reflection of systemic vulnerabilities in how we approach player safety. Football, at every level, must balance passion with protection. Otherwise, the price of glory will continue to be paid in lives lost far too soon. Antonio Edson's story leaves us not only with grief, but also with responsibility. If football is truly the world's game, then protecting its players, from the grassroots to the professional stage, must be a global priority. First, mandatory. Medical screenings should not be limited to elite athletes. Even at amateur and community levels, players should undergo basic cardiac evaluations. Many hidden conditions can be detected with simple tests such as ECGs and echocardiograms. Identifying risks early can save lives. Second, emergency preparedness must become a standard. Every football venue, whether a national stadium or a small futsal hall, should have an automated external defibrillator, no AED, on site. Studies show that using an AED within the first 3 minutes of collapse can increase survival rates by more than 70%. Yet in too many amateur competitions, such equipment is absent. Third, training saves lives. Coaches, referees, and even players should be taught the basics of CPR and AED usage. A defibrillator is only as effective as the people who know how to use it. Empowering local communities with this knowledge transforms bystanders into first responders. Finally, a cultural shift is needed. Football must move beyond the play through the pain mentality. Players should feel encouraged to speak up about chest pain, dizziness, or fatigue without fear of being labeled weak. Normalizing health checks and self-care is as important as tactical training. If these lessons are embraced, Antonio's legacy will not just be one of tragedy, but also of change. A reminder that every save on the pitch should be followed by the assurance of safety off it. In the end, football is a reflection of life itself, full of triumphs, heartbreaks, and the unexpected. Antonio Edson's final act on the court was heroic, a penalty save that should have been remembered only as a moment of glory. Instead, it became the last chapter of his life, a reminder that even in our greatest joys, fragility is never far away. But Antonio's story does not have to be in vain. By remembering him, by learning from his tragedy, and by demanding better safety in sport, we can honor his legacy. His name should not only echo in the futsal halls of Para, but also in the reforms that protect future players from suffering the same fate. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you witnessed moments like these in sport? Do you think enough is being done to protect athletes, especially at amateur levels? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in this conversation. And if you believe stories like Antonio's should be told and remembered, support this channel. Like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Player Story. Together, we can keep these memories alive and, perhaps, help save lives in the future.